Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, Labour's deputy leader, Tom Watson, says left-wing supporters of Jeremy Corbyn are involved in a plot which could destroy the party as an electoral force. Mr Watson was reacting to claims that the grassroots Momentum Group is planning a takeover in a secret deal with the boss of the Unite union, Len McCluskey. Yesterday's Observer newspaper published a recording of the chair of Momentum, John Landsman, in which he claimed Unite would affiliate to Momentum if Len McCluskey wins his re-election battle. Let's have a listen to that recording.
No one from the centre is going to tell you to kick people out. Okay. But it was important, for example, for Unite. Unite. Assuming that Len McCluskey wins the championship, and will, Unite will affiliate to Momentum and will fully participate in that.
Well, that was John Landsman in a recording. Tom Watson, Labour's deputy leader, has been touring the studios this morning. He says the intentions of Momentum are clear.
Well, I think John Landsman's secret plan threatens the very electoral existence of the Labour Party, which is why I'm speaking out, because it's got to stop. We're facing an early general election, and yet you've got a very powerful faction leader saying we need to take control of the Labour Party. That's not going to get us anywhere on the doorsteps, and it needs to end now.
Tom Watson, we're joined now by Momentum activist Rachel Godfrey-Wood. Well, you've heard Tom Watson's words that there is a secret plot to take over the Labour Party. What do you say as a member of Momentum?
No, there's no plot, and I have to say I find this all pretty disappointing. Like, all that Momentum have done since we came into existence has been trying to encourage new Labour members to get as active as possible in the Labour Party and to build up a mass party which is capable of providing a general alternative in this country. And I think it's pretty disappointing when you get figures from the kind of established Labour hierarchy basically just kind of like weighing on over this, which is a total non-story, you know.
Right. OK, well, let's look at it. You say it's a total non-story, but he is claiming, Tom Watson, and if you listen to John Landsman there of Momentum, he says Unite, big union, will affiliate to Momentum and will fully participate in Momentum, as will the Communication Workers Union. Is that not going to happen?
I have no knowledge whatsoever of any discussions, but obviously we're a left-wing organisation. We want to work with trade unions because we're in one of the most fundamentally unequal countries in the world.
So you can't rule it out?
I think it's the wrong focus of the entire question. Trade unions are becoming under attack for like 35 years. We've got the most repressive trade union laws in the country. Now, if there are people in those trade unions who want to work with Momentum, to me that would make total sense. And I think that's totally logical. And I think it's disingenuous to portray that as if there's something malign about it.
Right, so you aren't ruling out, and in fact, you would say it would be pretty logical for a union like Unite, for the reasons you've set out, to affiliate itself to Momentum, this grassroots organisation within Labour. The thing is, why would Unite and the Communication Workers Union want to divert some of their political funds away from the Labour Party's organising for local and general election campaigns towards Momentum, which we know is aiming to fight within the Labour Party?
Well, I mean, obviously it's up to trade unionists within Unite to take these types of decisions, but I suspect there will be people who understand that there's a relationship between defending the industrial interests of those workers and also a political struggle, which means having a Labour Party which can genuinely fight for workers' rights. And unfortunately, that's not what has existed in the past, particularly when people like Tom Watson had an awful lot of interest in, awful lot of influence in the party.
Well, what have you got to be worried about? I mean, isn't this just the case of a union affiliating itself to a grassroots movement within Labour who want to fight on behalf of workers?
Well, first of all, can I just say, Joe, that Tom was elected at the same time as Jeremy Corbyn. So if Tom is an establishment figure, therefore Jeremy Corbyn is an establishment figure in the party as well. And I actually think that Jeremy and others will be worried and concerned from what we've heard on this tape, because actually what is being said by John Landsman goes totally against what he promised would happen within Momentum. It was promised that actually anybody who was not a Labour Party member would not be part of a Momentum. And what is quite clear from that tape is John is saying we are not going to get rid of people from Trotskyists and other fringe parties in this country, and that goes against everything he promised Jeremy and others, and also have to say what he reassured Len McCluskey about, I understand. And this is the worrying thing, is to have an organisation like Momentum that basically, yes, has Labour Party members in it, but also has a rag bag of other people from different parties and different priorities from what our priority is, and that is trying to win a general election, which again, John Landsman, I understand, said that's getting in the way of our planning. Planning to do what? Basically to take over the Labour Party.
Right. I mean, before I come back to you, Rachel, this is a statement from Unite. And they say, they make it very clear, it's exclusively for our Executive Council to determine which organisations we affiliate to. There are no plans for Unite to affiliate to Momentum. And for the record, the General Secretary, Len McCluskey, has never met John Landsman. So is this a non-story by Tom Watson?
Well, it is a tape of what John Landsman has said at a meeting. And for me, the most worrying aspect of it, Joe, is that John Landsman and others in Momentum promised to change the organisation to be one in which only Labour Party members could be part of. John Landsman, and Rachel's heard the tape, goes against everything that he promised, and that must be absolutely disappointing for John and for Jeremy and others who have supported Momentum, and I am disappointed along with them.
Right, well, what do you say to those claims?
Momentum's rules under the new constitution are totally clear, so like non-Labour members, they won't have membership rights, they won't be able to vote in elections, they won't be able to hold key positions. If people in local Momentum groups want to campaign, like take part in broad-based campaigns in which you might have people in other parties, then that's up to them.
But Rachel, he is saying, you heard the tape, I'm not going to kick anybody out. We have a plan here. The general election's getting in the way of our planning. I mean, that doesn't sound to me like someone who has first and foremost got the interests of not just the Labour Party, but the people we seek to represent.
Right. What is the plan that John Landsman is talking about?
I don't know. I think, again, I don't think this is fundamentally about kind of like plots or plans. What this is about, it's about an organisation that wants to bring people into politics, get them engaged, because that is, in fact, the only way in which the Labour Party is going to re-establish itself as a genuine power in this
also
country.
in the tape, John Landsman said the group should take control of regional Labour parties and change selection rules for MPs and councillors.
Obviously, we need, the party as it stands, it's fundamentally unbalanced, right? So you've got...
that is the plan?
I'm not, on the National Executive Council, you've got 30-odd people, and only 6 of those are democratically elected by the members, and that's that's not particularly democratic. So I think it's very understandable that a lot of Labour members and a lot of Momentum members want to rebalance that, and that's a totally legitimate part of Labour Party politics.
Isn't that what other groups do? Isn't that what? I mean, that's what John McDonnell has said. The Shadow Chancellor was asked about this, and he said that's what Progress does. That's what other Labour influencing groups do within the party. They try and change the direction of the party. Isn't that what Momentum is doing?
There is nothing wrong at all with different groups. The Fabians, we have lots of different groups, some groups linked around environmental policy, health policy, to try and influence the party. But this is of a very different nature. Progress, you can only be a Labour Party member. We do not have parallel branches in our communities of Progress. What we have in Doncaster and elsewhere are Momentum groups. And it seems to me, whether these people are members or not, and I have to say that's questionable now that John Landsman's tape's been heard, there is an absolute entryism through Momentum into our party to influence from far-left Trotskyist groups who couldn't get elected on their own platforms but are seeking to come to the Labour Party. And I think this goes against everything that was promised to the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn.
Do you deny there has been any entryism into the Labour Party, or that there is an attempt to control regional Labour parties and try and change the candidates that are standing for MPs?
I think the real problem of entryism in the Labour Party is organisations like Progress, which have totally opened it up to kind of large, big-scale business which have no interest whatsoever in Labour Party values or what the Labour Party has historically stood for.
Are you wanting to change the leadership rules at conference? Would you like to see a change whereby, instead of, I think it's 15% of the Parliamentary Labour Party, MPs like Caroline Flint, get to nominate who goes on the ballot, it would be 5%, thereby claim, people on perhaps the right side of the right-wing side of the Labour Party, that you would have a left-wing candidate guaranteed on the ballot?
Joe, we live in one of the most unequal countries in the world, and obviously, on Momentum, we'd like to have leadership campaigns in which there can be candidates who will actually challenge those inequalities, and I don't see why members of the Parliamentary Labour Party, like Caroline Flint, should have the right to veto those candidates.
Right. Well, why should you have the right?
Well, first of all, the Labour Party is a mainstream party. We're not a revolutionary Trotskyist party. We're a mainstream party. We have won elections. We won elections from 97 up to 2010 3 times. And actually, it is important, I think, that members of Parliament do have a say, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the person that they will follow who will lead them in the chamber. And to reduce it down to 5%, I think is quite ridiculous.
Well, what are you going to do about it? Because Tom Watson says this is a battle for the future existence of the party. He's sitting in a shadow cabinet meeting now to discuss it with John McDonnell, who says this is Tom Watson interfering in the leadership election of Unite. What are you going to be able to do?
Well, I think, you know, both John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn should be worried and concerned by what has been said by John Landsman over the weekend that's been reported.
Yeah, but what are they going to do?
Well, I think the thing is, look, I joined the Labour Party in 1979, and therefore I've been through the Labour Party through thick and thin. It's first and foremost my priority, and my priority is winning a general election, and that's what we need to focus on.
Well, you've mentioned a general election. At the weekend, we spoke to Andrew Gwynn, who is Labour's election coordinator. He said he'd welcome a snap general election. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
If the government was to issue a motion in the Commons for an early election, the Labour Party would vote for an early election.
Well, it would be very difficult not to, Andrew, because if the government wants to dissolve Parliament, wants a general election, we don't want the Tories to be in government. We want to be in government. We want to have that opportunity to put that case to the British people.
Is Labour ready for a snap general election, if one were to be called?
Look, we should be ready for election.
But
We're getting ready for local council elections in May. What I would say is that for Theresa May, she may find herself in a difficult position because she may make the same mistake as Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown dillied and dallied over an election, and then when it came to it, he lost.
Although she firmly, and number 10's officer firmly said, we're not interested in a general election.
Like Gordon Brown, and I say this with respect, like Gordon Brown, Theresa May has not got a mandate.
Right.
We have seen policies on grammar schools, we've seen changes to policies on tax which weren't in the Conservative manifesto. She's got Brexit to deal with as well. And actually, yes, Theresa May should seek a mandate.
Right, should she seek a mandate? I mean, it would make it much easier for her if she thinks she could actually gain seats at a general election.
I think she's got a mandate from the people from the referendum, and I think once Article 50 is triggered, then I think the possibility of a general election disappears for at least 2 years. There can't be a snap general election because of the Fixed Parliament Act. So even if the Labour Party agreed to it, it would take quite a bit of time.
It would, although if they voted in favour of it, you could.
I don't think for a moment they would be able to, they would want to or be able to stop it. But I think there's further reasons. I think Theresa's driven by duty. And I think she sees a primary duty is to get a smooth transition out of the EU as is possible. But if there comes, I'm very glad the Labour Party is ready for it. But I don't think there'll be very many of them left.
All right. Well, I think everyone's ready for it. Rachel, thank you very much.
Labour's deputy leader says the future existence of the party is under threat because of what he describes as a secret plot by hard-left factions to take over the party. Tom Watson accused the campaign group Momentum, which helped Jeremy Corbyn become leader, of trying to increase its influence by obtaining direct funding from the Unite Union, the party's biggest donor. Unite has strongly denied the claim. Here's our deputy political editor, John Pienaar, and his report includes flash photography.
He keeps saying he loves being leader.
Morning, Mr. Corbyn. Is there a plot to take over the Labour Party?
But could anyone enjoy that? Life's tough for Labour on a good day, and this was a bad one.
I'm late for the meeting, I'm afraid.
As his team gathered together, the party tore itself apart, and his deputy condemned what he called a new and potentially lethal threat.
A secret plan by the hard left to take control of the Labour Party, using the members' money from Unite the Union to organise within the party. It threatens our very existence as an electoral force in the land, and it needs to stop.
Who got Jeremy elected?
The danger he named was Momentum, or its leadership, and a leading light, John Landsman, was secretly recorded guiding members to change Labour's rules to help another left-winger succeed Jeremy Corbyn, to pick left-wing candidates and drop others.
So we may well face an election this year, and that will disrupt some of our plans, but we've still got to plan what we need to do next. And what we need to do next is a number of things to change the National Labour Party.
It's personal too. This is the leader's most powerful ally, running for a new term heading Unite. Can Len McCluskey win and help the left tighten its political grip?
That he has chosen to use his members' money to take control of the Labour Party rather than develop policies and a manifesto that are attractive to millions of voters.
What he's trying to do is...
This high-level counter-attack from Mr Corbyn's right-hand man was remarkable.
In the week that the ballot papers go out for the Unite election, I think this is about Tom's interference in the Unite election, not the Labour Party.
Why would he want to do that?
Well, obviously he wants to install the candidate of his choice. I think he wants to dominate that.
Labour's identity's at stake in a bitter struggle that won't end quickly. The shadow cabinet had what was called a robust discussion. There'll be plenty more of those. And whether the election comes in 2020, as Theresa May insists, or sooner, Labour has never looked more torn or vulnerable.
Jeremy Corbyn elected as
Jeremy Corbyn won and won again. Unite denies planning to back his most militant allies, but won't say it'll never happen. So this fight will go on as long as he's leader and may just continue when he's gone. John Pienaar, BBC News, Westminster.
Now, it may be a febrile time there. It's a febrile time in politics here. There's the impending Article 50 protest, the Scotland issue. There's been election talk in recent days, although that's been resolutely smacked down by Number 10. But Labour at this busy time is in the midst of some awkward internal battles. You don't have to be hugely trusting of opinion polls to think that when the Conservatives have a 19% lead in them, as they did in a poll today, something's going badly wrong for the opposition. Well, there was an explosive meeting of the parliamentary party this evening. Nick Watt was outside listening through the door. Nick, just tell us about the meeting first.
Well, it was clearly a dreadful atmosphere, as you say, at tonight's meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party. All the bigwigs were there. Peter Mandelson came out and he said it reminded him of the dark days of the 1980s. Then a few minutes later, Neil Kinnock came out and said, oh, no, it was far worse than that. It was pretty clear that there was shouting. And at one point, Jeremy Corbyn was referred to as our so-called leader.
Right. Now, give us the cause. Let's go back 2 steps. What's got all this going?
Well, all this blew up after there was a report in The Observer yesterday which had a tape of a private meeting addressed by John Landsman. He's the veteran Bennite left-winger who set up the pro-Corbyn Momentum Group. And he outlined plans to try and tighten his group's grip over the Labour movement. And he said that if Len McCluskey, the General Secretary of the Unite Trade Union, succeeds in holding on in a leadership contest to that post, then Unite will affiliate to Momentum. Now, this is what John Landsman said in that tape.
So we may well face an election this year, and that will disrupt some of our plans, but we've still got to plan what we need to do next. And what we need to do next is a number of things to change the National Labour Party.
Well, Tom Watson, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, condemned that on the Today programme, and this is what he said as he turned up at a meeting this morning of the Shadow Cabinet.
I'm responding to newspaper reports at the weekend that showed there was a secret plan to take over from the Labour Party. Now, one of the things on the tape was an allegation from John Landsman, the head of Momentum, that Unite were going to channel their funds into being part of that process. I think that's very important, and I would like Len McCluskey to publicly distance himself from that allegation.
Now, after that meeting, it was a shadow cabinet away day. Reports appeared that Tom Watson had been isolated at that meeting and had been widely reprimanded. And John Cryer, who's the chair of the PLP and who attends meetings of the shadow cabinet, said he did not recognise that account of the meeting. And he also said to the PLP this evening he hadn't really paid much attention to this tape of John Landsman. He'd made a point of listening to it, and some members of the PLP heard him talking about an attempt to create a party within a party.
Right. I mean, lucky with all this going on that it looks like we're not having an election on May the 4th or whatever the date was meant to be.
Well, a very definitive statement from Number 10. There is not going to be an early election. That's what Theresa May said way back in the summer when she launched her bid for the Tory leadership contest. She's standing by that. And I tell you one group who are absolutely delighted by that. That's Jeremy Corbyn and his supporters, because they know 19 points behind in the opinion polls. If there was an election on 4th of May, bit tricky for them, bit tricky for him.
Nick, thank you very much. Well, with me now is the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Emily Thornberry, who's been in all those meetings today. First of all, can we just corroborate that Tom Watson was slapped down for going onto the radio this morning and expressing his concerns? He actually said he considers this a battle for the future existence of the Labour Party.
I am going to be very boring. I kind of abide by the rules, and that is that Shadow Cabinet meetings are private and they are held in an atmosphere of trust, and I never say anything about what happens in Shadow Cabinet meetings.
Answer. What do you think of Tom Watson yourself going on the radio this morning and saying it's a battle for the Labour Party, the existence of the Labour Party?
I think that it is important that internal discussions and fights within the Labour Party are done privately. We do not need to discuss them on the media. It seems to me that these are things that we can discuss internally. The Labour Party is about a great deal more than that. And although you say there aren't going to be elections, actually there are. There are going to be local authority elections. And I think of the elderly woman who I met in Warwick, who was so worried about the cuts to social care. She was not going to be got up in the morning anymore. She was going to be got up at lunchtime. And who was going to help her have her breakfast if the cuts to social care were going to go ahead? You know, the cuts to local authorities, the cuts to policing. These are things that we should be focusing on as the Labour Party.
And so many people have said Labour is letting those people down because it is not serving the role it should have of holding the government to account. Now, I'm not clear what is going wrong. Is it that Tom Watson went public with his criticisms? Is it the leader? Is it the MPs? What is it, in your view, that explains why Labour is 19 points behind the Tories in a poll?
Well, let me say, I mean, after the Shadow Cabinet away day, there was a statement put out, and that was a statement saying that we are a broad church, we have always had different groupings within the Labour Party organising, and so long as it's done within the rules, then no one is going to criticise. And I think that's got to be right. You know, that is who we are.
That's the settlement on today's argument. Now you just have to deal with the fact that poll after poll has you 15, 20 points behind the Conservatives.
And so that's why what we have to do is we have to focus on the policies, because if you ask the public, you know, about our policies, we're very popular. It's linking those policies with us, and it's making sure, you know, I would like to come on tonight and talk about Donald Trump and about what's been happening with the allegations against Britain and the Britain Secret Service. I mean, that's what I would like to be on tonight, but instead I'm talking about this.
Yeah, but you can't blame us for that, can you?
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is that what Labour ought to be debating is our policies and our best policy offer for the public.
You can't get to the policy until you've sorted out the internal dynamics of the party.
And yet, when it comes to policy discussions, there's so little disagreement. You know, that's what's so extraordinary.
That's because you've had so little to say on policy with respect.
No. The point is that when we have discussions on policy, actually it's quite easy, it's relatively easy for us to come together, because this is a dreadful government and we know that we have to be an alternative to it, and we want to be able to put out a policy offer. And then we descend into personality politics and fighting amongst ourselves, and we have to be more disciplined, and we have to focus on what the Labour Party ought to be about.
The criticism goes deeper than that. It was after the budget, for example, it was not the Labour Party that spotted the great flaw that pulled the Chancellor's budget, made it unravel. It was journalists and backbench Tory MPs. Your leader didn't mention it in his follow-up speech, even though it had been trailed 3 days before. There's something else going on here, isn't there? And it's not getting better. A year ago, John McDonnell suggested, give us a year, it's all going to become much better. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. And what is going to get you out of this?
Well, I don't think it's getting worse. And I think that actually the Labour Party is a collective endeavour, and we all have a duty to do our job as well as we can, and to work collectively and to work as one organisation. And that's what we should be doing. Okay. That's what we should be doing more than anything else. We should keep our focus on what is happening with the housing crisis. What are we going to do about the fact that we're having the number of police officers cut from our streets? You know, these are the things that we should be looking at, and we should be setting forward an alternative. Right. That's our job.
And as I say,
that's our job.
When the party has sorted out the internal issues and knows exactly how it's functioning, people will probably give more time to that. Can I ask you this? Do you want Len McCluskey to win the election for General Secretary of Unite? next week. Is that something?
Well, I'm a member of Unite. I have one vote, and I'll vote for Len. So
You'll vote
yes,
for
I mean,
Len.
I would think that he would be a good
And
leader.
can
of
I
Unite.
assume from
But,
that that you have no worries about Unite, momentum, getting together, perhaps working more in unison, so to speak, and and perhaps exerting a bit more power over the Labour Party?
Whether Unite affiliates to Momentum or Momentum affiliates to Unite, whatever way it works, it's not a matter for the leader of Unite. It's obviously a decision that Unite has to make collectively, and it will be an executive decision.
That's useful. Look, another issue that is relevant is whether the rules of the Labour Party should be changed to make it possible for a leader to be elected with just support from 5% of the MPs. At the moment, it's 15%. It doesn't seem like an enormous hurdle, but the idea is John McDonnell has suggested it should come down to 5.
Yeah.
Do you think that would be a better way of electing the leader?
Well, there have been a number of suggestions put forward. I think Tom wants it to be a third again. I mean, there are lots of different suggestions being put forward, and these discussions will happen internally. To be quite honest, those discussions, and however that's resolved, will not get that lady who is being held in bed until lunchtime because the social services are not coming to get her up out of bed. That's what we should be focusing on in public, and that, to be honest, is the important stuff of politics. Politics is about power and changing people's lives.
When Jeremy Corbyn was elected leader, there was a suggestion that the Scottish Labour Party would have a resurgence, that he would much better connect with the values of Scotland. Since he was elected leader, the Conservatives have overtaken Labour in Scotland, and indeed Labour's seen as being in some difficulty up there. Should those people who thought that by backing Corbyn, a kind of untapped socialist murmur around the country would be harnessed and would be brought to light, should they be disappointed that this has simply not worked? I mean, it has not gone to plan at all.
I think that politics in Scotland ought to focus on the party which has been in power for 10 years, and the schools are failing, and the health service is failing, and they have just introduced huge cuts which they need not have done. They have powers devolved to the Scots Nats, and yet they are not using them, and they are continuing to bring up constitutional crisis after constitutional crisis to cover the fact that they are not doing their job properly in Scotland. And it is up to Labour in Scotland, and I spoke to Kezia tonight, and that is exactly what she's pointing out, and she'll be pointing that out during these elections. And we need her to have the space to say that, and not to be spending our time fighting amongst ourselves and discussing people's personalities.
Emily Thornberry, thanks very much.
Thanks.
I've been getting away with it all